Before listening, pause for a breath. Close your eyes if that feels natural. What follows isn't meant to teach you anything. It's meant to remind you of something you already know, something that's been waiting quietly. We live in a world that constantly asks the same question. How much? How much does it cost? How much do you earn? How much time do you have? How much is enough? And sooner or later, whether we say it out loud or not, the question turns inward. How much am I worth? It sounds like a simple question. Practical, logical, responsible. But it isn't. Because how much doesn't belong to the mind first. It belongs to survival, to the deepest layer of the body, to the instinct that asks, will I be safe? Will I endure? Will I have enough to live? This question doesn't begin in banks or markets. It begins far older than money. Long before numbers, humans counted food. Fruits, seeds, animals, tools, shelter. How much grain will last the winter? How many animals will keep the family alive? How much land is enough to feel secure? This is where value was born. Not as greed, but as protection. And to manage this protection, we learned to measure, to compare, to exchange. A basket of eggs for a bottle of wine, grain for meat, time for tools. Eventually, we needed something simpler, something that could travel, something that wouldn't rot or spoil. So we created currency, a coin, a stone that meant nothing by itself, yet could represent many things. One coin could be 12 eggs, or 6 goose eggs, or 7 ears of corn, or 2 beers, or a bottle of wine. Different things, different values, yet all equal. Not because they were equal, but because we agreed to see them that way. And this is where something important happened. Value stopped being inherent and became subjective. The coin itself has no value. It can be used as currency, or as a stone to throw, or as nothing at all. Its worth depends entirely on the observer, on attention, on agreement, on context. 12 eggs will always be a dozen, but a coin is never fixed. Its value changes based on what it is measuring, and so does wealth. A child can feel rich with 10 euros. An adult may need 1,000,000. A millionaire may still feel poor without billions. Not because they are broken, but because their context has changed. The more responsibilities we carry, the more systems we sustain, the more people, projects, or structures depend on us, the more how much expands. So wealth is not a number. It is a relationship between needs and responsibilities, between survival and vision, between fear and trust. This same logic exists inside the body. Every cell saves energy to survive. Sugars, proteins, electrical charges. Cells exchange energy constantly. Tiny currents passing between molecules, between atoms, between particles so small we cannot see them. At the deepest level, life is an exchange of energy, and even there, it is quantified. There is always a minimum amount required for something to exist, a minimum pulse, a minimum charge, a minimum spark. Do you know what that minimum is called? A quantum. Quantum simply means how much is needed for something to be. It is not mystical. It is not abstract. It is the smallest portion that allows existence. And here's the paradox. The closer science moved toward the smallest pieces of reality, the harder they became to measure. Particles behaved like waves. Waves behaved like particles. Something could be here and not here, depending on how it was observed. At that level, measurement stopped being absolute. It became relational, dependent on observation, on intention, on awareness. Reality itself responded to being seen. And this is where science quietly touched something ancient. The mystics knew it, the shamans knew it, the alchemists knew it. Reality is not fixed. It is participatory. What we observe, we influence. What we value, we energize. What we measure, we shape. This doesn't mean the world is imaginary. It means meaning is not separate from matter. At the deepest level, what exists does so because it is held in awareness. And when awareness changes, value changes. So when we speak today about quantum leaps, we often misunderstand. A quantum leap is not about jumping to a better life or manifesting more things. It is about a shift in how we measure. When we stop asking, how much do I need to be enough? And begin asking, what am I measuring myself against? Because the moment you change the observer, the measurement changes. And now we return to the original question. How much? How much money is enough? How much success proves your worth? How much productivity justifies your existence? These are not financial questions. They are existential ones. They arise from the same place as hunger, as fear, as the instinct to survive. But here is what no one tells you. You cannot quantify the infinite, and you were never meant to. You are not a number trying to grow. You are consciousness expressing itself through form. You are the result of something immeasurable, temporarily appearing as something finite. And the moment you try to measure your worth, you reduce yourself to a coin. Useful, exchangeable, replaceable. But that was never your nature. At some point, growth stops being about accumulation and becomes about remembering. Remembering that value does not originate in comparison. Remembering that safety does not come only from possession. Remembering that survival is not the same as living. There comes a moment when progress no longer asks for more, but asks for depth. When counting stops helping. When measuring becomes noise. When silence begins to answer. This is not a failure of ambition. It is a return to center. So I will leave you with the same question, not to answer, not to solve, just to sit with. How much are you worth? And who would you be if you stopped counting?